Afternoon. Thank you. I'm glad to hear everybody is getting inoculated, and but we do have limited time. So I want to call this to order. And one thing I want to say before we begin, not to be overly optimistic, but since our last meeting, I've been on a lot of calls with the National League of Cities and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And honestly, I think that I was talking to Matt about this. Matt's on, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we are going to get the money, and they're, the big debate is, how much money are people going to get? But I don't know how they could possibly micromanage the money that's being given out. That would be a whole incredible, and I'm sure Dr. Shaw knows about this.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to administer these trillions of dollars. So I think they're just going to send out the money like they sent the checks to all these citizens, and they're going to hope that all of these cities and towns will follow. But I mean, basically, I think we should just have to assume, like a lot of places, that one of the reasons our revenues are down is because of COVID. And that's why there's this relief. So with that, I don't think that we should count on it, of course, as we're budgeting, because we're so good at this and cautious, but I'm way more optimistic than I was the last time we met. And with that, I will turn it over. I think maybe, Matt, you're supposed to do the disclaimer, and then I'll turn it over to President Shaw.
Sure. So just a reminder, folks, that this meeting is being recorded. We'll post it for folks to consume at a later date on the town website. So far, everybody has identified their name, but if for whatever reason you pop up and I don't see your name, I'll shoot you a message and ask that you identify yourself for the record. If this meeting does get interrupted for whatever reason, we will immediately end it, send out new login information, and reconvene as soon as we are able. I don't think we are taking public comments during this work session, so that part's not necessarily relevant. So I think that's it, and I'll turn it over to Council President Shaw.
Very much, Matt. I think it would be helpful to the group for you to be able to post the budget the way that you did last time we got together. So we're all looking at the same information. We don't have a lot of time to get through a lot of material. We have done a cursory look at the first few pages. I think if there are some questions or comments, we should try and work through them relatively quickly. I think the area where we may want to spend more time is actually the capital budget. But so as soon as Matt has this up,
yep, I will pull it up here.
Go through this starting on the first page, so people think about whether you have any questions you want to raise on the first page. Phil and I met, and some of you may have seen we put some comments in. We thought maybe we should have some fiscal notes in the budget. We had talked about doing that last time, as I recall, Jeffrey, and it seems like this time around, maybe fiscal notes would be a good idea to do. We didn't do it last time, but this time it would give more guidance.
Oh, totally. Very professional.
Phil, is there anything you want to add while this is coming up on the screen? Here it is.
No, I think you've covered it so far. I'll interject as we go along.
Matt, can you get all the columns or not? Because I think it may be hard to see the comments from Phil and me on the screen right now.
Let me see how I can do that.
Matt, you know what you could do? You could hide columns Q through V, and that might help. If you prefer, I can pull it up and then we can, that leaves your hands free to do other things.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Another alternative is just to click on each highlighted thing and then the text will appear in full in the box near the top. Over.
We're still waiting for Phil. Does anybody want to start talking about page 1?
Okay, do you see it now?
Oh, here it is. Perfect. We see
Thanks,
everything.
Phil.
Oh, you see everything now?
Yep.
Okay. Our comments column is a little bit, is it chopped off or do you see it? Maybe it's
It's
just
here.
my,
It's here.
okay.
So one of the things is a fiscal note around line 11. Phil, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, okay, so on that one, there has been some concern of various council members that a projection of income tax revenues in FY '22 of a little over $1 million, which represents a 20% increase over FY '21, a number which we feel pretty confident in, the FY '21 number. And I'll explain that in a moment. But the question is a 20% increase too optimistic? And to address that concern, what we were thinking was add a proviso in the budget that says, let me pull up this, you can kind of see it at the top. We would recommend a proviso that says, if revenues fall short of the amount projected in FY '22, expenditures, most likely road resurfacing, would be cut to offset the revenue shortfall. That way, by the end of fiscal year '22, whether we get those revenues or not, we're going to end up with the same reserve position. Because if they don't come in, we don't spend them. And if they come in, then we can spend them. So either way, we have the same reserve level. So I think we're addressing the concern about fiscal irresponsibility.
Phil, I am that council member that you were, I think.
You and Franny, Barbara.
Oh, okay. I always like a teammate. Can you, I don't know, since I've been on the council in 12 years, we've never had a proviso. Can you tell me a little bit how that is enforceable, and with 3 new council members coming on, do they have to abide by the proviso? How does that work? Can you help me with that a little, please?
I've never done it myself either, so I'm sort of guessing at this, to be honest. My thinking was that Matt, who will be there this whole time, would be responsible to monitor the budget and inform the council if we're not getting those revenues, then we would hold back on whatever expenditures. Let's say road resurfacing for now, before spending, if we haven't got the revenues yet. So I kind of see it as Matt's commitment to the council to keep an eye on that. And I think if we all understand that's sufficient. I don't know if you need to bring in.
I also think that the town attorney can advise us on that.
Yeah.
Right, I was going to say, I don't know if you need to bring in the town attorney or
Yeah,
not.
well, that's a question that Councilor Zuykaster should ask when the budget's being voted on. So it's in the record and everything.
And
I
then-
would say it's more like guidance than it is written in stone. I mean, a new council can make a lot of adjustments in this budget as the year goes on.
Okay, then Phil, can you please, because I'm not prepared, just refresh my memory, please, on what was the more conservative suggestion from the budget committee? This was kind of.
So the more conservative projection was assume a growth rate more in line with the historical trend. And I was suggesting maybe 3%. It's actually slightly higher than 3%. I think it might be 3.5%. But if you use 3%, then my recollection is that the revenues for FY '22 would be $146,000 less than we have right now. And
Well,
also, sorry, just to step back for a second, on the FY '21, that number we're pretty confident in, because even though we're only in March now, we have April, May, and June coming. A lot of the future distributions are tied to past distributions. And that number was actually given to us by Deborah Love from, I guess she's in the comptroller's office, right, Matt?
That's right.
And we had come up with our own estimate of, it was 847. She came up with 860,000. So we took her number. I don't think that number is going to change a lot. So it's pretty firm for FY21.
To Council President Shaw's earlier comment, I do think that if this, what you all are talking about is explained in the document, that binds future council, at least politically.
Is it possible to put it in the ordinance that we use to adopt the budget?
That we need to ask Ron. I don't know, but certainly the more documentation you put in this, anyway, we'll ask Ron.
The other way of looking at it is that we wouldn't enter into a contract for road resurfacing. I mean, the council would have to approve a contract for road resurfacing, and that council would not approve it without the money being available in the budget.
Right,
so,
right. This
yeah.
is just this doesn't bind you to anything. It just is a budget.
Right.
So any contract has to be approved for expenditure.
Right,
Right.
but as we know with our current council, as we've asked Matt to do on occasion, we've asked him to move money from one line to another, and that is a council decision. So once the money is in the budget, a brand new council can make that request, and that is a big concern for me. And I wonder if you all might consider leaving the road resurfacing out. And if the roads fail, we can always go, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Phil, but I imagine we can always go to the rainy day fund. Just put it off for a year.
I mean, perhaps I should speak up. I'm going to be obviously one of the council members who will be around next year, assuming current health stays. First of all, I'm hearing all this and certainly can convey as a council member the concerns of the prior council over rushing ahead with spending absent revenue to pay for it. And I'll do that. So if that's some reassurance, it's meant to be. On road resurfacing, the question really got to ask is, do we save money by doing it now versus later? In other words, is it going to be light maintenance now that stops a major purchase down the road? If so, we should do the light maintenance. And if it requires some rainy day funds from this year to do it, then we should do it rather than major rainy day funds from 2 years down the road. So we've got to think in those terms, and we've got to ask our engineers about, is it better to do it now? Is it better to do it later? Questions on things like road surfacing when we've got tight money.
Yeah, Robin, I very much appreciate your offering to guide the new council, but in the end, as we all know, every council member gets one vote. So and I know that so well because on many occasions I've tried to push the council to do something, but in the end, everybody gets a vote. And with 3 new people coming on, and I have maybe you know who they're going to be, but I have no idea.
I don't know who they're going to be. The nominees have not even been made yet.
I don't know if they're
No, but I can understand you're nervous about it. You're stepping off council and you don't know who's going to come. I don't think we're going to get council members who are wildly spendthrift.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I have no sense of who might be stepping onto the council.
I think there's a
good approach.
I think there's a logical problem. Sorry, go ahead, Franny.
Oh, I was just going to say, basically, this is a flag, and it, it means that before any big spending contract contract could be approved, the council would have to stop and look to see whether the anticipated money had actually come in. And, you know, we could, well, I think we could build it into the ordinance that, you know, basically there has to be, the budget would have to be reviewed. Well, anyway, I think this approach makes sense, and I'm comfortable with it going forward. I don't think that the assumption that Phil made is too far out there, and I think there's still time to amend the budget even in the next few months if necessary.
And also, I just wanted to raise a point that, I can put it up on the screen if we need to, the rainy day fund, the way it's intended to be used is if there's a shortfall in revenues, then you could access the rainy day fund to cover budgeted expenditures. It wouldn't be, if you put a lower revenue number in there and then decided to go ahead with road resurfacing that wasn't in the budget, you're not supposed to go to the rainy day fund to
Right.
finance unplanned expenditures.
What about if the roads fail, Phil? Or for example, if the pool fails, are we not allowed to use the
Sure.
rainy day fund for that? I mean, if
Look,
we
look.
end up with a hole in the road,
I know, the rainy day fund is not a binding resolution. So if there's an emergency, of course you could do it. The council can decide to do it. If it's an emergency, yes. I'm just
that's
saying
what I-
ex ante, that's not the way it's set up, that you plan to go to it for
Right.
possible expenditures.
Yeah, I mean,
I understand that. And I was only speaking if the roads failed, then we would use the rainy day fund. That's what I was thinking. I don't see any, at this point, we've waited so long to do the roads.
Yeah, I
I
would
don't
be
see
safer.
any harm in waiting one more year when we have a better sense of where we are in the community, and if this is a blip or if this is the way things are going to continue. I don't see putting the roads in the budget for this year when we haven't even had anyone look at the roads to tell us whether or not they're in really bad shape. I just don't see that myself as being responsible. If we knew the roads were about to fail, I would feel fine with it. But we are acting without any information. At least I have not seen any.
Barbara, just one point. I actually think that it is fiscally responsible to put a flag in the budget for road expenditures, because you're indicating to residents that this, not only is this something that we're planning to do over the next 5 years, whatever period, but when you look at the 5-year budget plan, you really need to think ahead and say, is our budget sustainable? So you really should be putting in some road expenditures, even if they get delayed because you have to conduct a study and you don't have time to do it this year. By putting it in, I think you're actually being responsible.
Yeah, I hear you, and I appreciate that. But at this point, since we don't know where our budget is headed, and as I look around the town, I'm not sure what the future of the income tax revenue is going to be here in town. I'm not sure people would want us to raise taxes. I'm not sure, people will want all the services that we're now offering in the current budget. I'm just not sure in the town as it stands now that we're leaning in the direction that the majority of the residents would want us to go. I just don't know that, and that makes me very uncomfortable.
There's
What do you think?
another issue, and that is that in FY24, we're planning on spending $130,000 on the pool, line 317. And if we move the streets up to FY23, then we're talking about 2 huge expenditures 1 year after another over.
I hear you, and maybe we just need to look at all the services that we're offering.
The other thing I've been thinking about too, and we'll have more information over the next year, is whether or not the town would have to borrow money to do some large capital projects in the same way that we did with the pool. I mean, that is a possibility. because we don't, personally, I think people would be upset if we let the roads deteriorate more. I don't, so anyway, well, I think this has been a good discussion, and we will get to the capital budget in a little bit. I'd kind of like to finish up the rest of the expenditure, the income side fairly quickly if we could. And Phil and I had talked about one more note, being responsive to the American Rescue Plan, just to indicate that since, Phil, can you say
Yeah,
something?
so I just clicked on that cell and you should be able to see it at the top of the screen where it says Somerset may receive up to $1 million over 2 years from the federal government if it can demonstrate that it complies with the guidance yet to be received from Treasury.
So I think it's just important, we're gonna acknowledge that. It may wind up being a source of revenue for us. So again, that was the idea with that.
I
couple-
had a question, actually, Marnie, if you don't mind me jumping in quickly. Were you planning on, similar to the proviso that you have for the income tax revenue, were you thinking of or planning to sort of earmark certain projects that the ARP money might go to, or?
I haven't gotten that far in my thinking. Maybe over the next month, if we get more guidance from Treasury. I think right now it's just speculation.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know what's permissible. But we've got some time before the budget has to be passed, so we may know more. The only other thing I would say about this page is 2 of our revenue sources, we probably will have updated numbers by the time of the May meeting, and that's the highway user money. We'll have those numbers probably in mid-April. And revenue sharing, we may have an idea of what the county council plans to do. They are not, I think, planning on passing their budget till June, but we may know what's in their budget by then. Any other points on page 1 or page 2?
Can I just ask Matt one more question about the roads? Is that okay, Marnie?
Sure.
There are signs up on Surrey, lots of signs up about that road is going to be resurfaced. Do you know exactly what they're going to do, Matt?
So I actually got a message from WSSC that they have some planned maintenance work that's going to be happening in town next year. And so that may be related to that.
Well, but this is resurfacing starting tomorrow.
It may be
I mean, I
because
think
of
it's
gas.
they had 4 different areas where they cut into the road. I think when they were looking for, was that Washington Gas?
Yeah, there was a gas leak.
Oh, I'm sorry, on Surrey Street.
I'm thinking it's Washington Gas coming back to
This,
kind of smooth out what they
yes.
did.
Yes, exactly. This is patching work that Washington Gas is going to do to repair the holes that they were digging to identify leaks on Surrey Street. I'm sorry, it's actually on Uppingham Street where WSSC has indicated that they may be doing some work next year. So.
Great. Okay, thank you.
So are we finished with the revenue side for the moment? Okay, well, we've already talked some about page 3. Matt's done some updates, and maybe we've got some other questions on page 3.
Yeah, I have something. I've been thinking more and more about this, and I don't mean to throw a major curveball at you all. But I think I had expressed in our previous meetings, I have some reservations about bumping up some of these salary expenses, given the budgeting shortfall that we're showing over the 5-year plan. And I've been trying to do some brainstorming to think about how we could still restructure in a way that does improve the services to the town, takes advantage of some of those opportunities, but also maybe thinks about how we can do it more efficiently. And one of the ideas I thought of was, instead of replacing, getting a new person in to replace Enrique, whose duties, I feel apprehensive about locking us into an arrangement where I don't know if they can take on both what Enrique is doing and some of the added responsibilities that we talked about related to public works. And so what I thought maybe a better solution would be to instead think about contracting out some of this work instead of hiring somebody new. So hiring a contractor to supervise the maintenance staff and to help make plans for new equipment, train them on new equipment, train them on some of these sustainable gardening practices that we're trying to implement, and essentially get somebody from a company like Backyard Bounty, Ray Brothers, or just some knowledgeable person that acts as a contractor, 10 hours a week, whatever it might be, to oversee the crew, give them directions, assist as needed. But it does save us in the overhead costs of the equipment, of needing 2 different trucks, paying the benefits, retirement benefits, workers' comp, all the taxes, things like that. And we can maybe realize some of the efficiencies that these companies have already baked into and realized themselves. And then instead of focusing in the town hall on records management, get somebody in to help with the website, which we had sort of talked about at the last meeting, but sort of refocusing them on areas that will provide more of a service to residents and improve the service to residents. So sorry, I had made some notes for myself. So I just want to make sure that I'm expressing myself and articulating it clearly. I thought of our new website and making sure that all the minutes are available, calendars updated, things like that, to keep our website maintained and up to date. We have 14 committees that are active right now. And it takes time to schedule all of their meetings, to open up their meetings, to coordinate with all the various committees. So to assist in that, there might be some IT stuff to make sure that all of our emails are working correctly and that people have the right path to send the right email to people, and to help out during the pool season when that ends up taking up a lot of time. So those were some of my ideas, and I did plug in some new numbers. I think it can end up saving the town. Not in this version did I plug in the new numbers, but I can, if you want, I can share my screen where I did, if that's helpful to you. Like I said, I realize this is sort of a curveball at the last minute and maybe a lot to take in, especially without the numbers. So I don't know what you all would prefer moving forward, but I can send you what I have. We can talk about it. I can answer questions. You can tell me that it's a terrible idea and I'm going down the wrong road. But those were some of my thoughts.
I think you're smart to do it that way, Matt, because I was worried that you were about how you were going to find one person who could supervise the maintenance staff, but also do some of the, you know, like town analysis work. And I think you're right to separate those out into separate jobs. And
Also,
the same
yeah,
thing
I
for the
also want to
committee stuff.
support the idea of doing contractors. I think that's a good idea to give you and the town the flexibility. Because I was looking, for example, the records retention, when I looked at it through the budget, it's more than $40,000 worth of spending. And when I think about what are services that are important to people in town, that would not be very high on the list, I'm sure. So,
I wholeheartedly agree with Marnie's and Franny's comments.
so maybe what would be an effective thing to do, Matt, is for you to send us all your reworked budget. I don't think we can kind of do it immediately right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But is there anybody else who wants to say, go for it, Matt?
This is Steve. I think it's a great idea but from a budgeting standpoint, I think it would be premature for us to budget in cost savings before we've actually done any restructuring.
Yeah, that's a great point. Especially when, and that, so number one, just want to apologize again that I didn't have something in front of you and just throwing this at you at the last moment. But that was one of the things that I thought about as well, Steve, especially thinking about like a maintenance supervising person or contractor. It may turn out that we need more hands-on work than we realized from them, or not. You know, they might be able to spend just. You know, I did have a brief discussion with Walter Ray, not to be presumptuous or imply in any way that they have a leg up on it, but just to get an idea from somebody who is familiar with Somerset. And he was ballparking and said, you know, I think realistically, most of the time it would be 2.5 hours a day. You know, we'd check in with them in the morning, help them out to get started, budget, you know, an extra half hour or hour during the day, and then check in with them at the end of the day. But Jose and Tomas are both independent and hard workers. They know what needs to be done for the most part. But to your point, Steve, I think it is because it's a restructuring. You know, it may need tweaking as the year goes on to sort of fine tune the process.
Yeah, Matt, there was discussion, I know, at the last meeting that, you know, when you talked about Public Works Director, the issue was, would that person be hands-on? Or would that person be doing actual physical labor or be an office worker? And in this case, what you're saying is you won't have a third person who is going to be doing labor. This is just going to be somebody who's going to be supervising the other two. Do we have enough hands-on in order to do the work is what it comes down to in this new arrangement you're describing?
Yeah, and so when I spoke with Walter, what we had talked about a little bit is, well, what the vast majority of it is going to be directing them, and we are still, I would still like to simplify the personnel manual so everybody's working the same hours, which will help in that regard. But there probably is going to be an element of needing some hands on deck. I talked to Enrique about, well, what times of year, what are some of the things that you all do where it is hard without 3 people? And he did say, there's times when we do the planting in the spring and then in the fall, those are the busiest times where we try not to take our vacation at that time because we are all working. But one of the opportunities I thought is another company might come in and say, well, you guys are crazy to not have a ride-on mower, for example. You know, that would cut down the number of hours that your guys are mowing by a third. And I don't know. I'm just using that as an example, but
Do you think there are efficiencies to be found, and calling in a Walter Ray or Backyard Bounty could probably describe those efficiencies? Is that it?
that's sort of where I was going with it. Yeah. Yeah.
You also look at somebody like Kelly, because of the emphasis on conservation maintenance.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I would reach out to her, gauge her and her crew's interests, Backyard Bounty, Ray Brothers. I don't have any preconceived notions about who it would be. But those are just some of the folks that I know are familiar with Somerset. So just naturally popped into my head.
Maybe you could get back to us, in the next day or two with your thoughts, both in a little bit in writing to describe things, but
Yeah.
also some budget numbers for just that section.
Okay, absolutely.
Do people, that's big. Thank you for such sort of out of the box thinking, Matt.
Well, and I will say, well, never mind. That's.
Can I just ask now, Matt, without entering any numbers now, but do you have any sort of a ballpark estimate as to what the savings might be from those changes?
Yeah, so I adjusted some other things a little bit on here. And yeah, with the caveat that was well said by Steve, that I admittedly haven't researched it enough to feel super confident, but the unencumbered reserves on the worksheet that I have, instead of looking at tens of thousands of dollars in the negatives, currently I have it dropping to negative $6,289 in FY25, and that's the only year that the unencumbered reserves are going under.
Okay.
How positive are they in the other years?
Let's see. So I have $128,067 in 23, $8,259 in 24, negative 6,289 in 25, and 62,273 in FY26.
So that's about 3,470. Well, over time, yeah. You saved over time about $60,000.
Yeah, and I mean, I think most of that is part of that is we don't get the incremental increases every year from salary increases and the associated benefits increases with that.
So it's about $12,000 a year over the 5-year period, approximately.
It's hard for me to until Matt actually, I think, sits down and looks at this a little more carefully. It's kind of hard for me to feel like we can be very firm about what happens exactly to those unencumbered reserves. Any other questions on that? So Matt, you'll get back to us as soon as
Yes,
you.
I'll make sure to make that my highest priority tomorrow to get you all some information.
Okay. You looking at that page, the one thing that you added, I think, was an extra $5,000 this year in environmental education.
I did. I put that back in because the stormwater committee had asked about speakers and speaker fees that had previously been budgeted for them. And so I was sort of being what I thought was conservative in terms of budgeting to just say budget as if we'll spend all of it and, you know, plan for the highest expenditures.
So between now and the end of June, they plan to hire $5,000 worth of speakers?
I didn't get a dollar amount from them, but
No, that's not accurate.
Oh, okay.
They don't have any requests yet to spend money on speakers, on consultants or anything.
Oh, okay. Okay. I misunderstood that. Thank you.
Any other questions from people on page 3?
Yeah, the only point that I want to raise is, you know, we are spending, and I'm not asking to change it, but I think it's worth it for Robin and Steve to keep in mind how much we're spending on legal fees for the next 5 years. And I just think, I would hope that Robin and Steve would keep an eye on that for a town of 400 and some homes. And how many residents do we have here? 1,200 or something,
1,200 plus, yeah.
including children? That seems like a very big chunk of change. But again, I'm not disputing it. I'm just asking that you all please keep an eye on it.
Okay, ready to move to page 4? I had just one question. Matt, you've gotten the proposals in for the website.
Yes.
Is $40,000 about what it looks like the average is, kind of?
I think that it will be less than that. But one of them in particular is a higher amount, trending more towards 40,000. You know, I put it in there, and I guess this sort of goes back to Phil's earlier point, just for long-term budgeting. I wanted to err on the side of putting more, us acting as if we'll spend more money and we can always realize savings instead of undershooting it. You know, if the committee, especially if the communications committee decides, you know, I know the other ones are 30,000, for example, but we just really love this bid, and that's the one that we really would wholeheartly go for.
When are they going to make a decision? Because then we will put real numbers in.
We are meeting on
the end of the month.
the 31st. And going through a scoring rubric that we have for the different bids. So I can certainly update it after that meeting in anticipation of the introduction of the budget. Because my anticipation is it's probably going to be closer to $28,000, something like that.
When you have the information that seems to be about right, then you
Okay.
can update this. And I think that's what should be, either if you don't have it by the time the mayor introduces his budget, then we can amend the budget that is being voted on at the May meeting to reduce that, so that we'll have more accurate
Yes.
numbers.
Yeah.
Anybody else, any other questions on that page? Okay, we're on page 5. Anything on page 5? Page 6. Based on your rethinking of things, I'm looking at line 168, Matt,
Yeah.
where a big chunk of that is records retention. Some of that is cleaning.
Yeah, I think it's about $6,000 is for the cleaning. So I think that's 500 a month. I would say for the 5-year budget, we could probably lower FY23 and beyond to, the $10,000 or, but actually the Donna Harmon came by the office today to meet with Donna Cawley about some of the items in there, and actually it's pretty amazing. There's some old. I mean, when you talk about general ledgers, there's literally ledgers from the very first years of Somerset that really are literally crumbling, and so they will disintegrate. And so she said that she would like to push her committee to make a recommendation to do some digitizing of records. And so I think we should at least have 1 year to budget in some money to do some digitizing of some of those really old records in particular.
Okay. So,
Well, also, Donna Cawley is supposed to give a number regarding what needs to be digitized, because there was a lot of stuff in former Mayor Bear's boxes that were original documents that we have to keep either in person or digitize. And so I think she's assessing that right now. Isn't that right, Matt?
She actually has sent me some numbers. That was sort of reflected in that 15,000 number over the years.
Because it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate the kind of things we have to keep, and since we don't have room, and some of it is disintegrating, some of it we're forced to digitize.
Yeah, some of it, if we don't digitize it, it will be lost to the ethers.
Yeah.
Then there's other stuff that digitizing it would be great for our records keeping, but that's more of a prioritization policy decision if the council feels that's important.
But that'll be something that probably won't be, the final number won't be known until when the budget's voted on.
We don't have a bid, for example, from anybody. Yeah.
So that's something, because I've been talking to her about that. She's working on that.
So are you suggesting we leave these numbers the way they are, or do you plan to make any adjustments now?
Well, leave it for now, and then it might be adjusted in the next, by the time it's introduced, based on what Donna finds out and what and input from Matt.
I'll have a discussion with Donna and try to get you some more.
But they're really on top of it, the two of them. So
Right, but what I said earlier, Jeffrey, is right now, it looks like the budget is $43,000 for records retention. And when you try and weigh out other things that residents might want us to do, I just am not sure how high.
no, I'm just saying, I'm saying that number will be adjusted by when it's introduced, or maybe before.
And
So we don't have enough information to change it right now, but I do anticipate that it'll go down.
and
I thought Matt said Donna had already turned that in. No?
She did.
She gave me some estimates, but I can talk to her about getting kind of harder numbers for you there.
But I can say that it's not going to be hard. it's not going to be hard to reduce that number, Marnie.
Perhaps you could ask her to say what is legally required of us in records retention versus what.
Well, yeah, but it's a balance between what's required and how much space we have. But honestly, just having been involved with it, I'm confident that that number can be reduced, and we'll get back to you. But there's no reason we don't have enough information to change it today, but it'll be changed very soon, and I'm sure it'll be reduced.
All right. Anything else on that page? If not, page 7. Going once. Page 8. Page 9. We've got some new things on page 9.
Marnie, I should know this, but going back to page 8.
Uh-huh.
Just, can someone refresh my memory why the coaching fee was lower for the year-end projection for fiscal year 21?
The council only approved $14,000. I think as I recall, I think what happened was that the swim team didn't submit a request. And so the council felt that without a request, they didn't feel comfortable allocating the full $20,000, and they decided to do 14,000 or whatever.
Okay, I would like to ask a question here. Who is I forget who is the liaison to the swim team committee?
You?
Is it Franny?
It might be me.
Okay,
I list.
because I really think there needs to be a discussion about with them as to their decision making on spending money without the council authorizing it, because I don't think they understand that is part of the town government. It is, the budget is decided upon by the council, and they just can't make all these offers and decisions and bonuses without in consultation. So that's why and Council President Shaw is well aware of this. That's why we always have these really good questions about this, because that group does not understand. And yes, we love the swim team. Yes, we want to support it, but willy-nilly deciding to give bonuses without, this is public money, and they don't have the authority to do that.
Okay.
So it really needs to be, and I hope the whole council agrees with me on that.
Absolutely.
Jeffrey, this is Ann. I'm one of the team reps for
Oh,
the
hi.
swim team. Hi.
Hi.
So I'm happy to talk to, I mean, I don't ever see a budget either, even though I'm a team rep. So
Right.
I don't exactly know how it works. I know
Okay.
Jeff works with Michael Rourke, who is the treasurer.
Right, but
Yeah.
right, but there's no,
So it sounds to
there's
me like
really no
that
treasure.
you guys,
I think it would be good if you, since you're on the budget committee and you understand all this stuff, I think you and Franny and Matt should powwow about it, because everybody's well-intentioned and they just need to understand better. And I think you'll be a great person to get it all clarified.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there is supposed to be an upcoming budget committee for the swim team, or a swim team meeting,
Right,
but it sounds like process-wise,
Yeah,
there was a call for budgets from these various committees,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you guys never got anything.
it needs someone like you with know-how and understanding all this, because, we don't want, and Matt and I have discussed this with lots of swim team committee. We don't want these swim team committee members to be worried about all this, bureaucracy. We just want them to decide on policy and have a lot of fun. But we just want to get it in order. So these public, we're the trustees of these public funds, and we have to be very careful about it. And I know you understand that, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that the comment's been made before that even having a separate budget for the pool would be helpful, just because it crosses over 2 budget years and it gets complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated. Yes, since the swim season falls into 2 FYs.
Right. Yeah. So Franny, I'm happy to work with you and Matt and Luke and Jeff on that. Absolutely. I'll follow up with you separately.
Thank you.
Great, and I think that's great. Barbara, I think part of the answer to your question too was that the swim team season was very different last year and shorter, and so I think that there wasn't quite the same need for the coaches' fees as in a usual season.
I just remember, my recollection is that we were at 14,000 for many years. Does anyone else remember that? And then
I
somehow,
think we were at 20,000 for many years.
do you? Okay, I could be misspeaking. I
Well,
thought,
that's my,
The main thing we've been concerned about, and this is really to Anne, is that we want to make sure that there's no exposed liability on the part of these swim team members. Because I think, for example, in the past, an offer was made about some bonuses or about jobs, and they didn't have the authority, and they could be exposed to liability, and we have to make sure they're not liable for anything. So we just have to make it clear about, going through the right process so that everybody is protected.
Yeah, absolutely.
any other discussion on that or page 8? Moving on to page 9. Matt, I had one quick question. I don't actually have the bond schedule since the interest rate was changed. So you're taking these numbers from in line 266, the SunTrust Pool House bond. Those are right from the schedule you have from SunTrust?
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, good. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And actually, I mean, you were talking about before about, possibly taking out another bond or something for road repairs or something. And one thing we could look into is restructuring the bond as well, since interest rates are very low right now. Although our interest rate on that bond is pretty low as is, but that was another thought.
Any other questions on that page? Okay. Now we're moving to the capital budget, where I think we might have a lot more things to talk about. Does somebody want to start this conversation? Well, I guess Phil and my comments go to the fact that I sort of went online to look at things to see, if I were going to go out and buy things, how much they cost. But let me start with 283, just to get some clarity. Matt, are you saying we need more leaf blowers than we already purchased?
No, I was saying this year, that's what that projected money was spent on.
And then so you're saying the $5,000 in FY22 is for a power washer?
No, no, the leaf blowers and the power washer were for this fiscal year.
Okay.
I just put $5,000 in there in case of equipment failing, to not be completely hamstrung on it.
I have heard actually from a few people that and I know this won't be for yet, but unless we start using the battery operated ones, that sometimes they do fail more easily. They haven't perfected them just yet. So I think it's good to have some money in there.
How much did it cost to buy the leaf blowers this year?
Altogether, it was about $2,800.
So maybe we could just go with 3,000?
That's fine. Yeah, we can reduce that to 3,000.
Do I make that change now, or Matt, are you gonna make that change in the file you're gonna send around to everybody later?
I can make it in the one that I have here.
Okay. If you want me to make any changes here for any reason, I can do it too.
Then I would take out, thanks, Matt, or for the details on the 15,000 for the renovations. I think I would just delete that myself. That's totally a splurge.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and make those changes for now, just so we can see, excluding Matt's other changes, what the effect is on reserves at the end of the day.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm down to 294, which is the truck. And I think we're all in agreement with the strategy you talked about, which was leasing for 3 years and then purchasing. And I guess I'm wondering where you got your numbers, because I went online for purchasing or leasing and purchasing, and my numbers were lower.
I believe I looked at the different Chevys and Fords that are on the market, and
For leasing?
for
Or-
leasing, and
Okay.
well, actually, now that you mention it, maybe that's why mine was so much higher. Maybe I only looked at financing the purchase of a new car, and it was 400 and change per month. Now that you mention that, actually, you may be right that I was not looking at the.
I didn't look for a new truck price. I'm not going to argue about that 50,000. That may be right. But when I looked at leasing trucks, the way a lot of them were set up were like $300 a month for 36 months with an initial payment of like $1,500 to $2,000 when the deal was signed. So it seemed to me that the numbers might for 22, 23, 24 might be closer to like maybe 5,000 and
5,000. Yeah.
and then more like 3,000 in 23 and 24. Just kind of, I mean, if you wanted to look and get a look from your perspective, this was just my doing a quick internet search for leasing a truck.
I think that makes sense, especially because I would anticipate that we're going to get some trade-in value from the truck that we do have, even though it needs work.
I'll add, I don't think they make a truck, so this probably isn't helpful, but we bought a Subaru and it's 0% interest for 5 years.
To just finance a new vehicle right now?
Yep. But
But
that's,
the idea was that they were going to wait to get an electric truck. That was the idea for leasing for the 3-year period, which is how much most of the leases are for.
right.
And
Yeah, and I agree with that thought, but I just think leasing is, for myself, I think leasing is just throwing money down the drain, but that's just a personal thought.
There really is there isn't a selection of electric trucks on the market at the moment. There will be by 2025, that's almost certain.
There will be electric truck.
Yeah,
truck-
there are several companies producing them over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, okay.
So do you want to put 5,000 for 22 and then 3,000 for the next two after that, Matt?
Yeah, that's what I changed it to on mine.
Okay.
If a good electric truck comes on the market before 2025, would we be able to shorten the lease and
Probably
buy a
not.
truck in, let's say, 24? Over.
Probably not. My guess is.
Well, they might let you trade it in if it's the same deal. You never know.
That's a good question. I'll certainly raise it when I go and talk to the dealer about options, though. Thanks for that, John.
More questions on the garage truck stuff? On the office equipment, my question was, how many of these fireproof file cabinets do we need? Is this the total number? Because I understand they're very expensive. I went online and looked, and they're expensive. Do we need to put all of our stuff in fireproof cabinets? What's the deal here?
Let me pull up what was proposed here. So this was for this was basically the total. So your question about can it be phased in? We can do it that way if that's what you wanted. This was 4 fireproof filing cabinets at about $2,000 each. But that was one of the ones I think Donna had suggested we should just go ahead and do it because, you know, the risk is if there's a fire, you know, then some of the stuff will get lost. But
remember, this is also contingent on how much is digitized, and you need to weigh you need to weigh that against. So that's something that they can work on.
yeah, that's another option to digitize them and not-
also I think also we could look into buying used fireproof cabinet. You know, let's.
I don't know if you want to do that in your brand new looking town hall.
Well, I don't. There could be, you know, a lot of offices are closing now, and people are digitizing. Maybe there's new stuff. I don't know. I think we should do more. We can do more research.
That's a good idea, Jeffrey.
And Donna also can do. You know, Donna can also do some of that research. She's a whiz at this.
So then I think that brings us to the last big question, which is the roads. Honestly, I would be more comfortable with the road discussion if we had good information. And I know, Matt, you work so hard. I know there's only so much one person can do, but I feel like we've talked a lot about the need to get a better sense of what the quality of our roads is and what kind of schedule we need for road replacement. We used to do that with Larry. We have redone some of our roads. We have other roads, and I'm not sure. I know at one point we talked about having people drill in, and then you thought about that and said, you know, that's probably not the best way. But I feel like I'd be more comfortable picking what year to put road money in if we had some kind of professional assessment of the roads. My walking the roads will not do it.
I might also note that Larry used to walk around and look at the curbs. There are a lot of broken curbs in town, and if my memory serves me correctly, he would say it's better to do the curbs at the same time as the road. So
Yep.
If Wayne, I see there's $6,000 for Wayne. If he could spend some time on foot, making a list of the broken curbs, I think that would be very, very helpful.
Except he isn't an engineer. Okay,
No,
I've been listening to all these great conversations about stuff. I listened to the chair and Vidalia, the president, Councilor Rizzo, and I honestly think that the best thing to do for this year is put money in this budget just for a professional analysis of the condition of our roads by, not by, I don't think Wayne is even as you, by, but, you know, by a high-end professional company. Because just like President Charles said, we can't make any of these decisions without great information. And as Councilor Zeughauser says, what's the problem with delaying it one more year? Let's get the right information. And then maybe we're going to get all this money anyway, so we'll be able to use it next year for this. But I think that it's we're all uncomfortable spending a lot of money on the roads without good professional information. So that's what I would suggest as this, because I've been listening to what everybody's saying.
I can't remember the last time Jeffrey and I were on the same page. I wholeheartedly support Jeffrey's proposal.
Didn't
I'd
we have,
be curious to
Ma-
know what Matt says about this, whether he's had any complaints from residents about certain streets.
That's a good point.
I would say no.
We don't get, look, our street,
Generally, yeah. I don't think, there's a couple of spots that I have in my head that I know are an issue. But I think by and large, the streets are not something that I'm getting a lot of calls.
why don't you all drive around other municipalities and see our streets are still in better shape? Go into Kenwood, even go farther north, go into Rockville.
Try
Our
to.
streets are still pretty good.
By the way,
I think-
my wife and I have walked around many of the neighborhoods bordering Somerset, and there are some streets that don't even have curbs at all.
That's right.
We're
I think that would be an interesting thing that would come out of a study. I'd probably ask them to look at that because I suspect that once upon a time they actually laid concrete down for the street. We had concrete streets in Somerset and they were just paved over with asphalt, and that's why you have, like on Cumberland here, for example, the curb is so small. And I suspect that's because there was just an extra layer of asphalt that was put on top of it, an extra inch or two of asphalt that makes the curb seem that much smaller.
One thing I would like to ask before we hire somebody is that we try to coordinate a little bit with some of the research that the Stormwater Management Committee comes up with, because I think having good curbs, I think we've all seen it. If you have good curb structures in place and make sure that the streets are graded properly and so on, that could help some of the issues that the residents are having on their property. I mean, if you have a very small curb, it's very likely that water will flood onto your front yard and so on. I just think it makes sense to look at those two things together.
Well, I'm sure that's something an engineer would look at.
Good. Thank you.
it may be that you're going to need to fix a few of the speed humps, which are deteriorating.
Yes.
This coming year. So you might want to have a little money in for repairing that as opposed to a big repaving project in this. So it sounds to me like people would be more comfortable putting road paving, resurfacing money into FY23.
Well, wait, if we get a really good report, the engineer would be able to tell you the condition of the roads currently, and part of what the request for proposals would say, they would do a replacement plan, like a 5-year replacement plan for all the
That's what
streets
Larry
and
used to give
curbs.
us. Larry gave us year
Yeah.
by year which
Right.
roads.
Right. That's what we would get from in this report, the condition and the replacement plan. And they give you different options, you know, based on how much you want to spend.
I fully support the idea of the study, but I do think that for the 5-year plan, we need to put a flag in there to indicate that we're going to be spending significant money on the roads over the 5 years. Otherwise, we underestimate the impact on our
Oh, yeah.
reserves.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. That goes to what John was saying.
Yeah.
And I think you should put money in both the curbs line and the resurfacing line. And I would not personally, I would not put it year by year because there are economies from doing more at one point in time rather than trying to do one street at a time. We
Sure.
used to-
Well, that's a point that we don't know, you know, it depends on what the report says.
Well, that may be true, Jeffrey, but I'm suggesting that having $75,000 a year in 24, 25, and 26, you might be better off putting a bigger chunk.
Whatever, you know, whatever makes you feel good about it, because it's not binding, it's just,
Right. Oh, no, we'll know a lot more a year from
Yeah.
now.
yeah. I think that the committee likes to put placeholder figures in, isn't that right?
Yeah, we need to indicate what the impact's going to be on reserves. I wouldn't have a problem with putting a lump sum and say FY26. We build up reserves into the special capital fund to pay for a major road project in FY26. At least there's-
Whatever you all are comfortable with, you know, because it's just for planning purposes, you know.
maybe
No,
Council
I think it
President.
would be better to do it in 2 fiscal years and do something earlier. I'm okay with putting something out in FY26, but I think you need to do something for either 23 or 24.
That's just like I said, whatever you're comfortable
Yeah.
with. This is-
I guess we just need to think about it a little bit more. I don't know if we have to decide right now, right?
Right.
So-
We're not going to be getting together again except by, I don't know if we can have people send material out by email. We won't be able to talk about it by email.
Well, if everybody wants to get together a third time, that's not out of the question.
It could be a really short meeting
well-
because we only have a few areas.
Right, we did Matt's revised budget for his.
Yeah,
and-
I think it's fine. I think it's fine if everybody is available to get together briefly for another time before it's introduced.
That would be, I think, a good idea if we could find a time. Well, let's finish this and then let's take a look at our calendars. So is anything else people want to say on page 10? Okay, moving on. This is our last page for the capital budget.
I guess oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt. What?
Oh, I think I was jumping the gun. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut in.
So does anybody have questions or concerns or changes they want to see on page 10? 11, I'm sorry, 11.
I do. I don't see a note for line 308, the $5,000. Just what is that for?
That is for planting in the different town spaces, like the entryways, the rain gardens,
Great,
things
great.
like.
Thank you.
When are we going to get the plan from Kelly? for
I
the-
just had a conversation with her on Thursday. She is going to send me something over this week, actually. So
Perfect, good. Maybe we can talk about it at the work session.
yeah,
Okay.
that's actually the date. I told her if we can have something so that you all can see it for the work session. That's exactly what I had recommended.
And then
Anything else?
I have another question. I'm sorry, Marnie, go ahead.
No, that's what I was just asking for questions. Go ahead, Barbara.
I have another question on line 316 for equipment. Are those, where did we get those numbers?
Sure. So the 20,000 was based off of historically just the various repairs that are needed every year. And then the 50,000, the bump up in FY23 was because of the lifespan of the heaters at the pool. So when we replaced the heater last year, they said, you're probably going to need to replace the other one in the next 3 years.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on page 11?
Well, I had a question. This John had sort of raised that if we're putting off the large infrastructure work on the streets, do you want to bump that up and do all of that next year, for example, on the pool renovations?
What does American Pool say?
Well, when I last spoke to them, they said they had sort of broken it out into two different categories. And one, they said, you really got to take care of that. You really should this year. And in fact, they had said, they had even sort of cautioned about keeping the pool open too late because they didn't want it to interfere with this work this year, that they wanted to make sure that this is our last year before we do anything on these areas that they say are in great disrepair. The rest of it, they said, could wait a couple of years, but is clearly starting to age, does need to be replaced. So it's just a matter of if we wanted to space it out, or the work needs to be done. So, if we do just do it all, then we can do that as well.
So what are you saying in terms of where the number should be, Matt?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying it should or should not. More to John's point, it might be easier to oversee, one large infrastructure project at a time. And so, but maybe it's better to hold off on that for now, because I also haven't spoken to them about doing it all at once and making sure that they could fit all of that work into the fall. So I might be putting the cart before the horse on that one.
Yeah, like you say, if we need to do the pool quickly and the roads can be put off, then you could move the pool budget earlier and the road budget later, especially since we're probably going to do a road survey over.
Whatever we do, I think we have to look at it in the context of what it means for the profile of our reserves over time. Because we can't do something, we can't push it up everything too many years forward. Otherwise, we'll have unencumbered reserves negative in FY23 and FY24 that we just don't have, and we'd have to borrow. So we have to look at what the implications are for that over time.
Okay, that's a great point. Thank you, Phil.
So where are we now? I guess, are there other questions on that page? Because the next one is around the reserve position. Anything else on 11? Okay, so going with where we are right now without shifting the pool money, but shifting the road money, is that right? Are you shifting the road money? Have you done that?
We haven't done that yet. If you want to take a look at, say, one scenario, I can quickly do that here. Sorry, where was the roads? What line was that?
Okay, the roads are line 302.
Oh, there we are. Okay. So just to throw out some numbers, I mean, these are not at all binding. We're just playing here. But we have a total of, I think it's 600,000 over the 5-year period, right? 225, 450, 600. Suppose we did a study in FY '22 for, and some other repairs. Let's just say we did 50,000 in that year. And then Marnie, you wanted to put in the rest of it in 23 and 24. So we've got 550 left. That would be 275 each year.
No, it wasn't. No, I was thinking 24 and 26 actually, but those are just guesses. It doesn't matter.
But I
Okay.
agree with you, Marnie. You know, also for the town manager, doing 2 road projects back to back is a lot of work. It might be
Okay.
better having a year in between.
So I'll do that. That's fine. 275,000 in 24 and 26, right? So making those changes, rephasing the streets, nothing with the pool. It's still the way it was. Now our unencumbered reserves are positive every year. You can see it down here, right? We have a much more comfortable position in FY '22, which is the key year. And then at least going forward, it's not until FY '26 that we're getting pretty low, but still positive. And we don't have the money yet. We don't know about the ARP yet.
I will say the Stormwater Committee is beginning to think about permeable pavers for the streets, which could lead to complications and more expense.
Wait, I'm sorry, Robin, I didn't hear you.
The Stormwater Committee is considering recommendations for permeable pavers for the streets. And they are more expensive and higher maintenance. So we'll wait to hear what they have to say, but just saying that that could be coming.
Now, by the way, if you wanted to, given that rephasing of expenditures, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud now, whether you want to lower the income tax revenues or not, because we have 386,000 now in unencumbered reserves for FY '22. But it would,
Question,
if you
Phil?
lower it, it's going to have an impact on the whole 5-year horizon. So maybe we should leave it the way it is for now.
People notice when you raise taxes, not when you lower them.
Anyways, maybe we should wait for Matt's numbers before we make any other changes. Right? Because Matt, you were gonna propose some other salary expense changes.
Yes.
And I can send this file to you and then you can plug them into this file.
Okay, that works.
And then we still have to discuss when the third meeting would be.
Now, before we do that, is there anything else people want to say about this document? I think I'm amazed at how well we've done in terms of time. I had thought it would be hard to get through everything, but thanks to everybody for the good work. My guess is we wouldn't need more than half an hour or 45 minutes for a third meeting. Does that seem right to people? Or you could plan on an hour and it would be less?
Yeah, I would plan on an hour to give yourselves cushion.
Okay, so we're in the last full week of the month already. So I think it would be hard to do another meeting this week or not. I mean, do people want to try and meet this week? Is 5 o'clock a good time for everybody?
What
I mean, we
about,
could
what about Monday, the 29th?
At 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Does that work for people?
I think that's a good
That's for
time.
me.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
Works for me.
We'll plan on just 1 hour.
Five to six, is that what we said?
Yep.
We should be able to have some kind of ballpark figure on how much a study of the streets would cost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there are different,
I just remember Rich telling me it was much more expensive than I ever would have thought, so.
It is
why-
expensive, but it's well worth it.
I don't know, Matt had some reservations, as I recall, when he was looking at it. So you guys are gonna have to work through that a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you could even call Larry and see what his thoughts are about what would be a good approach. You're still buddies with him, right, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'll be happy to call him.
Is there anything else anybody wants to say for the good of the order?
Well, I want to congratulate all of you again, because I can't imagine any other of our neighboring municipalities that work on the budget as well as you do, and the staff, and have a committee, incredible committee like we have.
Our budget
So-
committee is
so-
the best.
So I think that we should submit the town council for an award from the MML.
I want to thank everybody for such good work today, and especially the budget committee for helping us see how what our choices might look like and the implications of our choices.
Maybe the budget committee members want to run for council.
Speaking for myself, the answer is no, thank you. You guys are much thicker skinned than I would ever be. But I did want to say that the budget committee, speaking for all of us, we couldn't do our work without the wonderful collaboration of the whole council and the mayor. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, see you on Monday at 5
Right.
o'clock.
Okay,
Bye.
very good.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Saul?
Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.